And we're live.
Wir sind
Miles.
zurück.
Exactly. Miles, how are you? What are you listening to?
Which question do you want first?
Give me the what you're listening to right now. Well, that'll tell me a little bit about how you're doing.
I just downloaded Coldplay's new album, Moon Music. It's pretty good. It's totally different. I like bands that innovate, and it's very chill. So, yeah, quite like it. Listened to it once through yesterday. I'm a big fan. I've liked them since their inception. And they got big, and some people will be like, "Oh, they sold out all that crap," but I still think they're awesome. My favorite band of all time is still Radiohead, but Coldplay is just a few behind. I'm getting over a cold too, so if my voice sounds like I'm I don't know what the right thing to say is, bad DJ voice. And I did a lot of yelling at my daughter's soccer game. I was able to coach on my fucking peg leg, so I got to be out there in the field, which is cool. I'm losing my voice, but hopefully it comes back. So I'm listening to that. Yeah, Coldplay.
I love it, man. Coldplay, and yeah, I'm glad you brought up Radiohead. That's what I thought of when you talk about innovation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were one of the first bands that I know of. Was it 8, 9 years ago, 10 years ago? No, probably even 14 years ago, where they released Radiohead released an album for free, and it was by donation, right? So you could download it for free, and you paid whatever whatever you thought, and they got lots of donations, and people thought they were crazy, but they were basically at the point where music is now, where they know that the internet and your record deal is just a distribution channel. It's not a profit center. And so they just wanted to get ears in it. And I think, yeah, Coldplay. That's why they were on SNL. I was like, wow, Coldplay's on S. Oh yeah, they're pushing an album. They're good for them.
Clever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, well, good. Those are both throwbacks. Um, yeah, Coldplay. Yeah, you would listen to Coldplay. All
I
right,
know.
all right, all right. Well, Yellow. Did you like the song Yellow?
Yeah, that was the one that did it. 2001 or 2000, whenever it came out. And
All
I've
right.
just been creating since.
Well, you got you come by it honestly. You want to be melancholy, you listen to Coldplay. There you go.
Yeah, earlier albums, the poppier ones, they have some upbeat songs since then. So those are my less favorite ones. But there isn't a song I don't like, which is good for favorite bands.
Well, okay. I'm gonna go the opposite. I've been listening to Linkin Park. So same era, same
Nice.
era.
Nice.
But
Limp Bizkit era.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know why I liked Linkin Park more than Limp Bizkit. It's arguably it's new metal and they're probably the same genre. Um, and but yeah, it was definitely a big angsty teenager Linkin Park fan. Linkin Park, Breaking Benjamins, a lot of a lot of fun, a lot of fun bands from that era. So I've been listening to Linkin Park going for runs, and it's been hitting the spot.
Very good.
Um, so yeah, man, you got a surgery tomorrow. You are you ready to go under?
I guess so. Yeah, so I found a went to two surgery consults, and they both said for someone who wants to be as active as I am and not re-tear it in the future and have better function, I should do this. And so I'm listening. And the only downside is the infection potential, so I just have to be careful with that. But it's gonna hurt for a couple days. It's gonna suck, and then it gets better from there. But speeds up the healing because everything's very attached, which is good. And I'm trying not to go to worst case scenarios in my mind. Like that's just a stupid task that you send your brain on. So trying to stay present, trying not to. I feel fear, but I've also done this before with my ACL, so I kind of know what I'm up against as far as like getting knocked out and waking up with weird things coming out your mouth. What am I even saying? And waking up to pain. So yeah, and just that's kind of where I'm at. Just trying not to get too deep in the weeds with thinking about it. So, but it'll be good in the end. And then it's off to physical therapy from there.
Well, you're at the jump door now, so you don't have that much time to waste thinking about things.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's yeah. You got to jump. Can't stay in the plane. There's someone behind me, which is good. I'm not the last man. I can't quit.
That's right. That's right. Um, well, today's topic I'm really excited to get into because um, it's it is a it's an era of reformation when it comes to at least men and doing authenticity and this concept of the nice guy and a pleasing personality and people pleasing comes up a lot in books and in conversations that I listen to and in conversations that I have with my friends. And as a reformed people pleaser, I think you might be one of those too. I don't want to speak for you, but having some direct experience with this in some ways, I thought this would be a good time to talk about the the level of toxicity that builds up in your life when you when one is focused more on pleasing others than on being yourself. And
Mhm.
uh, uh, tell me about your experience with this, and your, directly or indirectly. Do you have experience being a people pleaser, or call it conflict avoidant, or among any many other things? But what's your how do you relate to those Mr. Nice Guy topics?
Yeah, this archetypal energy has many names. Like there's a Glover's great book, No Mr. Nice Guy is really good. And then it's the good girl for the feminine for women, uh, aka codependency. It's another way to talk about it. Um, and at the end we can go into where these come from and what to do about it. But I learned to shut down my own self-development, self-authenticity development to stay in attachment to my parents when they got divorced. And so my dad was out of the house and my mom was in the house and smothering. And then I had a stepmom, and that was a whole nother thing. But the main point was like I didn't want to, I felt like must have been too much. So I had to sort of turn myself down and walk on eggshells and do whatever I thought would make my dad like me, want me, kind of take cues uh, of what I perceived was the right move. And even with my mom, even though I rebelled, and my stepmom, I think it made it worse because if I disappointed her, she would poison the relationship with my dad, and I didn't want to make him go further away. So that walking on eggshells thing got worse. Um, so you do this weird dance. The order of operations goes wrong, goes haywire. Correct order of operations should be who am I? What do I want? What do I need? And then I'll consider the other person. When you get into this dynamic, it's, oh, I have to worry about them. Well, what do you think I should think? And what do you think I should do? And then I'll know how to feel. If you're okay, then I'm okay. If you're not okay, then I'm not okay. And you give all your power to the other person, thinking that's the right move to do. And it can get really over indexed. And there's some crossover with attachment theory. I don't Probably the more anxious type falls into this category, but I think there's plenty of avoidant people that can still be nice guys or good girls. That's a whole nother podcast. So in relationships, well, what I did was like try to take cues of what the girl wanted. Like, where do you want to go to dinner? What do you want to do? And like try to read the room like I did as a kid, like read her moods and whatever I perceived she needed or wanted. I'll just be that guy, get this sort of chameleon move going on, which you kids have to do to please their parents when they have this dynamic. Obviously, it causes a lot of problems. And at some point, at least a healthy woman will be like, I feel like I'm your mom to take care of you. You don't really have a self. You're kind of leeching off of me. I don't respect you. This is kind of this is gross. I don't like that. So I would, get ditched quite a bit, which is kick off the whole cascade of, oh, I must suck and not be worthy of love and blah, 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 which kind of goes into the belief and into the wound of this archetype. If you get this happens a lot too, like where you have a borderline person who likes to control people. They always find the nice guy or good girl to manipulate and control. That's a massive codependent relationship on pathological levels where both parties are like, it's almost like the domestic violence scenario where the the woman goes back to the DV guy because of that whole repetition compulsion. They're really scared to leave, or this time I'll show that if I love them enough, then they'll stop and they'll love me back, and therefore I'm lovable. That whole thing. There's a lot of soupiness going on here, but the point is you lose yourself. You go from supporter to caretaker. If you're caretaking, you lose yourself and you're lost. Supporting is you're with the other person, but you still have boundaries and a sense of self, and you know what you're about, and you're walking the path together, not on their path. And some nice guys you'll talk to, and you'll talk about their needs, and they'll be like, "Well, I don't have any needs." I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, no, I don't have any needs. Really? And literally they haven't gone there, so they've only thought, what does my partner need? That's what I need. And they've never thought about what they've needed. So that is kind of a true answer at first, but as you peel back the layers, that you find out what they've missed all along, and it's usually the stuff in childhood that they've missed. So I work with a lot of guys in my practice and some women who have this archetypal stuff going on. Probably a lot of generational wounding that passes this stuff down, that keeps it going. But the goal is to move to who am I? What do I need? What do I want? Correct order of operations. Start building an authentic self, um, not one according to another human. But that's if you're playing the codependent realm, that's not what you do. And it can be really scary to leave a partner, especially when I talked about that borderline and uber nice guy one, because if I leave that person, then I'm forced to ask, who am I? And if you've never asked who you are for 65 years, and all of a sudden you're forced to ask, who am I? That's pretty scary because your ego is like, we don't do that. We're not going to do that. That's really threatening. Our whole soul of existence has been to please other people and this human, and that pain is better than the fear of change. Even though you could have a phenomenal life, things can vastly change. I'd rather stay in that hell. It's like the devil, so that can be a bit dicey. But once you get through that, you just feel this rush of energy. And I saw this with my dad when he finally divorced my stepmom. He was just free, and he started doing things he wanted to do and just felt light and like, should have done this a long time ago. And we were like, uh-huh. Yes, you should have. So it's just interesting. It probably showed up slightly different for you, I'd imagine. Um, that's how it showed up in my relationships until I started doing my own therapy, and then got into attachment wounds, and then the disorganized attachment style. This would show up more if I felt like I had less power in the relationship. then I'd be nice. Walk on, give them power, just give to get, covert contracts. Um, you try to give everything so they'll love you. And a lot of guys say that when their significant other leaves them, they're like, "But I gave them everything." It's like, yeah, you did. You gave too much. You can't do that.
Well, when you were dealing with this, so you're in a relationship, and you're maybe not dating a controlling woman, but you want to give her control, right? What you might have, or like, what? Tell me about what you were thinking when you would get into these dynamics of, um, not really voicing your own preferences and or needs.
Mhm,
Were you thinking of like you said, I'm trying to read the room?
mhm.
Was that like in a way of like, okay, I'm gonna guess what restaurant she wants to go to. I'm gonna guess what she wants to do. I'm gonna guess how she wants me to show up, and that's what I'm gonna try and be.
Kind of, yeah, it's even worse. Like, well, where do you want to go to? Like, kept putting it on her. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? It's like, if I would have just said, hey, we're gonna go to X restaurant, wear your nice dress, that would have been like an awesome move, right? Very manly move. But instead, it's like, well, I'll go wherever you want to go. And that's kind of like it puts all the too much power on their hands. One that doesn't want that, it wants to share power and have a challenging relationship. They're not going to like that unless they're disturbed, and then they're going to want all that power. But it was more like that, like not wanting to be ditched, trying to sort of putting him on a pedestal, that whole thing. Just trying to do anything you can to keep them around. What would please them to, and in this magical idea of like if you do that, then they're gonna magically stay with you if you just please them like a slave. That's kind of how it played out when I perceived that I had less power or I was less than in some way. Or if they were super hot or like all these projections of what I needed in a woman and I just wanted that person so bad, then the nice guy would come out. If it wasn't that way, because since I have the disorganized part, that with the avoidant part, that it doesn't come out. So I'm a bit complicated in that way. It's not that way for everybody.
So you know, I think that there's a level of pain tolerance that you have to be that guy in the relationship because number one, I think most guys in at least when they're young, not everybody, but like if you're a foodie, maybe you do care about where you eat, but I literally never cared where we would go to lunch or to dinner. And I know that my girlfriend didn't want to choose. So I just started to have a running list of places and, play the bingo card game. Like, is it American food? Is it Cuban food? Is it, Chinese food? Is it this? Is it that? And then uh, she's not going to be happy with any decision, but she at least gets to choose from a swath of things. But I um I found myself in relationships not not necessarily the pedestal thing like rings a bell for me because like I can't sacrifice like a lot of my personal self-care. I had a relationship early on, and thank God it was like a lesson that became really really valuable to me. I dated a woman when I was 20, and she was just like emotionally manipulative, like at the NFL level. Like everything was so intense, and
Yeah.
she would like we would have plans to have dinner later. I get off work and I would change and I would go to the gym, and she would see me going to the gym, and she'd be like, "I thought we were going to dinner." I'm like, "It's 5:30. Like I've got time." And she's like, "Well, no, because I want to have cocktails beforehand, And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna be at the gym for 45 minutes." And she would say, "Oh, so the gym's more important than me?"
You had a controlling type, yeah. This is the disturbed type I'm talking about. Not saying this person's borderline, but that's kind of going down that road of like manipulation and I need control over you.
100%. And what was hilarious, it was like this double bind that my brain wasn't ready for at the time. So so it was either me be pissed at her and not go to the gym and then I'm gonna ruin the whole night because I'm gonna be upset, or I'd go to the gym and she'd be pissed at me the whole night, which if you're listening to this and you're a sophisticated man or woman, you know that there was some good chemistry there if the tug of war was that intense all the time. However, it was a level that I couldn't even articulate or wrap my hand around or set boundaries for. So I got exhausted very quickly and exited
Well,
that
good,
relationship.
good for you. She put you in a lose-lose scenario, and when you're in a lose-lose scenario, you're in a fight in a dangerous place. Look for the third option if you can. If not, get out because that's the sign of you're with someone who's manipulative and gaslighty and wants to control you. When it's always a lose-lose.
The only way to win is to not play.
Yeah, get just don't engage. Exit.
But I do remember feeling you know early on in my life, feeling like that my partner is what made me valuable because I didn't value myself. And
Yes.
so everything that all of her ideas were good, mine were not. Um, I would be self-deprecating in a toxic way. And lots of little things that now I see are red flags. But the point is that either I could make someone else happy in a relationship and I would be unhappy, or I would be yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to make myself happy. I think that was sort of that's the sort of like the underlying theme of this, right?
Mhm.
It's like if you don't know how to make yourself happy, you have to have somebody else validate you so you feel like safe and
Yes.
down. But I would do, but my experience in this pleasing thing would be in this pleasing phase of my life would be I would try new things, even if I didn't like them, which is like actually probably a good open-minded thing to do. But then I would get myself into situations where, because I didn't want to say no, I would agree to things I knew I didn't want to do. And so I found myself in dynamics with friends and with girlfriends where I'm like, I don't want to be in a bowling league. Here I am, I don't want to, this or that. And what I realized, what I started to tell myself is, oh, maybe relationships are too much work. Maybe
Mm,
relationships aren't fun,
mm,
and maybe friendships are exhausting. And it was the way that I was showing up, I was making it really hard for myself to enjoy
mhm.
any of those things.
Yeah. You're giving all your power away like that just so that person doesn't get mad at you or leave you or to keep the peace or to avoid conflict.
Yeah, avoid conflict. So I'm gonna put yourself back into that scenario where you're trying to please the person you're dating. What when did you start to notice, or so you said you did your own therapy or you took on your own therapy.
Mhm.
When did you begin to shift your mindset away from wanting to read their mind or let them decide everything? When did you become okay with the discomfort of that?
Well, I think luckily for me, like I had that little rebel in me from my mom's relationship that at some point I would just get pissed and not deal with it. If somebody started manipulating like that, that fuck that. That's when I would be like, I am getting out of here. Any sort of gaslighty, borderliney stuff. I was like, ooh, this reminds me of stepmom. Fuck you. I'm out of here. So I had a lot of like anger towards that dynamic. So that actually helped me not stay long in nasty relationships like that. Um, but if they didn't do that, then I would tend to be try more nicey, or it was all this fear of like, oh, but I can't be the toxic male type either because that'll be an off-putting thing because culture says that's bad. So you're kind of like, well, what is being a man anyways? And I was kind of drifting around trying to figure that out too. Um, didn't was not really initiated into that whole manhood process. And a lot of guys that aren't. end up being nice guys because of this reason. Uh, so just pain also, at some point I would just get ditched or ghosted because that girl or woman wouldn't want to be around. No healthy woman wants to be around a nice guy. It's completely unattractive. Like they feel like you're their mom, or like do you have any thoughts of your own, or like where's your backbone, or what? You don't feel like a man, you feel like a boy, and this is not attractive. And so that's I think that's what would happen. But doing therapy and working through some of that and realizing what I'm doing, when you do therapy, you're also like developing yourself and like asking you for the first time, who are you? What do you need? What do you want? And you start developing an authentic self, an authentic ego, so to speak. Of course, in the end, you want to transcend your ego, but you got to have a healthy ego in the first place to transcend, and that was part of it because I didn't have a healthy sense of self or ego. And so if you do that, then you kind of feel more comfortable in your own skin, and it doesn't occur to you to try to get your needs met insatiably from some other party. You're doing it to yourself. If you don't have that, you wake up every day needing someone else to validate you, tell you you're good enough, that you're a good boy, that we're safe, everything's safe. And your cup fills up for the day and you're like, cool, we're good. And then you wake up and the next morning, cup's empty. Oh, I got to go back out and get that person to tell me I'm good enough. Oh boy, that's wrong order of operations and insatiable. It's like chasing the dragon like an addict. So you got to give that to you. And that's more attractive to anybody, anyways. So that's the work in therapy. And you start doing that and you stop doing this nice guy stuff as much. Even if you are still in a relationship, you that shifts. Or when you go into the next relationship, you learn to stop doing that. And there's a whole coaching piece around how to do that as well. But that was sort of my journey in a nutshell.
Okay, let's talk about sex because
All right.
I'm really curious about the nice guy thing. I one of the things that came up frequently when I was in my 20s, and I feel like w in men's groups and men culture, it's like the blind leading the blind all the time. Like you have people who don't know what they're talking about, talking more to other people who don't know what they're talking about. And one of the conversations that I heard often was um, that sex is bad, and that wanting sex is bad, and that the and this is sometimes it's said directly. So I think with my friend group, I heard it said directly, like you can't ask for sex, you can't need sex, you can't like sex is something that is shameful, and it's bad for men to want, and it is something that is taboo to want from women that you're not married to. This was the vibe. And then sometimes people would say that out loud, but there was a sense of people would avoidant men would friend zone themselves, right? And they would have these relationships with
Yeah.
women
Yeah.
where they thought it was bad to talk or be forward
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
romantic intention. And
Yep. Classic nice guy move, friend zone yourself. Yep.
right, and then these same guys would have all these unfulfilling, painful, toxic relationships with women and blame them.
Yep.
So
Because then you'd have to look at yourself.
yeah,
Another
totally.
classic nice guy move.
Well, so then for me, the transition, and this is completely random how I was in this situation in my 20s. I was a economics major and a women's studies minor. Um,
You
and
were?
yeah, I was a women's studies minor because I was dating a powerful woman, and she was like, "Hey,
So you
you're
made it
really."
your minor. That's how much you wanted to understand this woman. Wow.
Yeah, well, and she said, she's like, the way you communicate about the human experience is powerful when you use the word I, but you can't talk about what I'm going through because you have no idea. And like I want you to understand what women are going through. She didn't even say that. She's like, she didn't even tell me to do anything. She
Mhm.
said, just take one class, take one women's studies class so you understand like what we're talking about sometimes. And it changed my life. Aaron St. John, shout out. You're one of my heroes. We dated for a hot minute. back in the day, and she was is well read, is very very is an advocate for kids and does all kinds of good work. But I took one class, and it was a complete game changer in my life because what I heard women talking about what it was like to be a woman, what the experience on the other side of this dating coin was. And it was the first time I was exposed to sex positive community where women are like, they don't want to have, frail, fraught conversations around sex. They talk about it openly, and
Right.
now they have Call Her Daddy, so that you can just get it straight from the horse's mouth. But it was a complete eye opener for me, and it also gave me a seam, gave me a permission to change tack
Mm.
and show up a little bit more authentically, for better or for worse, ladies. Um, but that it basically it undemonized, it ended the demonization of masculinity and sex for me
Yeah.
on the woman's end, and that made me feel a lot more safe, right? To show
Hmm.
up.
That's great. Yeah, a lot of nice guys are terrified to approach women, one to be rejected, but they don't want to come off as that toxic guy. And they think anytime you approach a woman, you're being toxic, which is asinine. No, it's okay to approach someone and talk to them. You just don't want to be a douche, of course. And it's been over-indexed out. Like you got the douchey guy and the overly sensitive nice guy. We got to bring them back to the center again. If you want a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you're probably gonna have to talk to them. So, and nice guys will just wait for some woman to finally choose them. They'll just put themselves out there and they'll beg for the scraps and be like, well, this one girl finally came up and talked to me. And cool, I found somebody. They just wait to be dubbed or told it's okay or given permission to date, and that's how it happened for me from one of my relationships. I was playing soccer and really liked this one girl, and she finally came up and said, "So when are you going to ask me out?" And I was like, "Oh, cool, I have permission," and I asked her out. And that ended up being one of the worst breakups I ever had. A powerful relationship, one of the worst breakups I ever had. So that's another issue. So you have to develop a sense of self to have some self confidence in order to go screw it up and try to just talk to people. You don't have to be a pickup artist or a douche. You don't want to do that anyways. We just go talk to people and have normal conversations and go talk to the checkout man or woman at Safeway or whatever, Vaughn's, like just practice approaching people and just being normal, and then it'll be easy. If you have a normal conversation, it might lead to something. And yeah, you can have a little fun seduction in there and see where it goes. But the nice guys know zero about seduction and good girls. It's all got to be forced outcomes and clean and certainty and whatever, because there's so much fear around it. So that's the work, how to do that and not do that.
Vons, well, I know you've spent too much time not in Oregon because we don't have Vons out here.
It's the same thing as Safeway. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in California for my PhDs. Yeah.
But yeah, it puts so much pressure to that point you're making about, when somebody, if you never talk to anybody and you're, the person at the bookstore comes over and says hi, there's so much pressure because you don't have any reps, and because you have a sample size of one per year or whatever that you are talking to, there's a lot of weight on every interaction. And if you, like you said, become the mayor of your life and you just, be on a first name basis with everybody in your community, you get to know people, and just by building rapport, that's a skill. Like
Yep.
you're getting the skill of entering other people's lives in an innocuous and safe way. And
Mhm.
and you want to talk about seductive, make a woman feel safe.
Yes, you have to. The women will not open emotionally and physically to you if they don't feel safe. Trevor Boehm said something in one of his books, that Man Uncivilized. He said, uh, men are afraid women are going to make fun of them, And women are afraid of that men are going to kill them. Like evolutionarily, there's some truth to that. And like, yeah, if you don't feel safe emotionally, that they're not going to go there. And I think there's some sort of lack of trust and not feeling safe with nice guys because it's like if you don't know who you are and you can't identify what's going on inside of you, I don't trust that. That seems unstable, you know. And so I'm out unless you're a disturbed human and you want to control somebody, then that's the perfect guy for you, but or girl. Yeah, the trust is huge, safety is huge. If they don't feel good about the relationship, they're not opening intimately, emotionally or physically to you. So that's why there are a lot of issues with sex and relationships with codependent relationships and nice guys that it often just goes away or one of the partners uses it as a means of power and control. It's not a good setup.
Well, uh, it is. It isn't. It certainly isn't helpful for either party because if you're the person in control and the other person's trying to please you all the time, then you're not really in a relationship with another equal partner. No one's challenging you. You're not growing.
Nope.
My girlfriend and I we talk about this all the time because we're both caretakers when we're not in a good place. We accommodate a little too quickly. And I catch her sometimes and I say, your role here is not to keep the peace. Like there's no pearls are made when there's without irritation. So we're gonna
Yep.
rub up against each other and irritate each other.
Yep.
And that's where the good stuff is actually gonna happen.
And then the repair happens.
So the pain of so we're gonna go through some of the pain points of it being when you sacrifice connection for authenticity, or authenticity for connection rather,
Attachment. Yeah.
you get a you get a mediocre relationship that sucks the life out of you, that doesn't give you the joy and the physical intimacy and the fulfillment that you would want, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship. You have more energy sucking, less joy and fun.
Hmm.
Um, you, the way that I would feel is if I show up as my true self because I've laid all this groundwork and the story of this person that I'm supposed to be, and I'm not, then it's going to shock this other person. And it would, right? If you show up all of a sudden and, actually, I'm vegan. And I actually, I know I said I didn't want kids, but I actually want to be a stay-at-home dad.
Exactly.
That's a completely different. Now, if you, no, it's okay to change your mind. You
Of
can
course.
you can
Of
walk
course. Yeah.
people into that.
You walk him into it. Exactly.
But these are, and I think when I was a disempowered people pleaser, I would blame the other person, right? And I told you the story of, my, you know, radically, uh, hard charging gal from Miami. But even though she was a lot, I also was empowering her to manipulate me,
Yep.
right? So
Enabling.
the story that I was telling myself when I was not showing up well was that this other person is doing this to me, or I have to because. So
Yep.
this other person gets all the blame and responsibility, right? And I avoid the responsibility and blame myself.
Hmm.
And so resentment builds up, even if
Yes.
there's not direct abuse going on. But if you're in that sort of a dynamic, there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings. I had a lot of hurt feelings and
You just swallow him.
unrequited love. Yeah, I didn't even know how to articulate
Yeah.
feelings.
And we don't want conflict. A lot of nice guys growing up saw their parents have conflict and thought that means people leave and their hurt feelings and weird shit happens. And they never saw them repair and that it was okay to have conflict, or they actually never did repair, which is even more traumatic. And so that plays into the nice guy dynamic. And they never want conflict because that could mean the person could leave, and that's inherently threatening. We need to lock this shit down and make sure we're secure here.
Yeah, man. So when did you turn the corner? When, like, was there a conversation or a moment where you were like, ah, I know what I'm doing here. Like you walked down a different path. Do you remember like where you
Hmm. Yeah, a couple breakups. It took me a couple breakups to figure it out. One was uh, they're both of these women I thought I was going to marry, so it was extra painful. But the my girlfriend who I dated right out of undergrad, and when I moved to Germany, she moved to Spain. We'd saw each other once every other month. Every other month, we go to each other's countries, which was totally badass. And when we got back, I thought we were gonna get married, and she ended it. But I think because I was too much of the nice guy, and like I think she felt like she had to be my mom, and it was probably a turnoff, is my guess. And she probably had her own stuff going on, and it wasn't like a blow up kind of breakup. It was actually very humane and nice, like we maintained friendships. We're still friends to this day. But that was the first pass at like, okay, what am I doing here? How could have I done something here? What was my part to play in it? Um, and so that was the first cue. And then that second relationship, the one I just told you about, I really started to see where I was doing that. Um, and I'm like, I don't ever want to do this again. And so in therapy, learning about more about attachment theory, about childhood dynamics, where this stuff comes from, and then starting to build a healthy sense of self. Once you do that, it doesn't occur to you to be the nice guy as much or the good girl because you're like, you're good, more or less.
So how did that show up for you? So you were saying you start to know yourself in one way. You
Yeah.
start to understand yourself. Then
Your
you're in a
needs.
so what did that look like when you showed up into that conversation with your partner? What did you say that you wouldn't to that point wasn't normal for
Mhm.
you to say?
My own thoughts, my own needs, my own desires, my own opinions, at risk of them being different. And I would date and like, why am I going to be with someone that's like totally different from me? Opposites attract, but then they attack, is what they say. Nice guys will just, oh, you like death metal, and I secretly hate it. Oh, I like death metal too, or I'll pretend. Not. I did stop doing that shit. Just like, in dating, like it's like a job interview. What's the Seinfeld or yeah, Seinfeld joke? Dating's just like a job interview, except for that you have the option to take your pants off afterwards. That's kind of what it was like, is like getting to know, hey, are you a good fit? Am I a good fit? I'm just going to bring what I think I like. And if it doesn't mesh, that's okay. I'm not going to freak out that this didn't work out. You're not the last female on the planet. Going through iterations of that in practice, but like, and while doing my own work, asking like, what am I about? What do I like? Well, let me think about all the things I do and like, and it's okay to be vulnerable and show that to that person that, yeah, I was an athlete and I was a modern dancer. Like, can you handle that? But there's a very masculine, feminine thing right there. Can you handle that? Like, I'm just going to put that out there. And if you don't like that, then it's probably not going to work out. Whereas a nice guy would be like, well, she seems like kind of a person that doesn't really like sports. So I'll over index in the dance part and really play that up. Or she's not very artistic. Well, I'll tell her how cool a soccer player I was, or that's the nice guy dance. And you're not being authentic. So it's the inverse of all of that. And just over and over getting to know who you are and having self-compassion and just keep doing therapy, keep doing coaching, and you feel more strong and good in your own skin and less afraid of conflict, and you know how to do it skillfully, you know how to repair. It just gets a lot easier. You get used to approaching women, and if they say no, whatever, it's all good. You don't take it personal. That was sort of my journey. Just practice and dating. It took a long time. Dating wasn't awesome, but I learned a lot. There's had some funny stories and experiences and painful experiences, but that's part of the growth as well.
Yeah, well, the painful experiences are, if you're doing them right, those are fun. Those are fun for someone. Uh,
Your friends.
well, one of yeah, definitely my friends. I got rejected a lot, as I've said, and as I continue to say. And I think it's important. It's important to be rejected just for the sake of it, because I think it's so much of so much of our, and I'm still afraid of rejection, by the way. And I send emails to my list a few times
Of
a week,
course.
and
It's not fun.
I don't want to get the unsubscribes and all those things. But I remember the joy. Like I remember going up to approaching a woman at a bar or a bookstore and them getting the opportunity to reject me, or they were happy about it. They were like they were telling me to fuck off, but they were doing it out of like in a pleasant enough way because they were like, this is the game. You have to cross the room and talk to a stranger. I respect that that's uncomfortable for you, and I'm not interested. Thank you. You know, and sometimes they would do it in a colorful and flagrant fashion because they had a little too much caffeine, and that's
Mm.
okay. Like being dismissed is part of being a man. But I remember, I think one of the things that you were talking about, the showing up as who you are, is the balance of the masculine and the feminine. If you're lucky enough to have reference points along the way, and relationships with strong men in your life, then it's less jarring. It's less jarring when we discover that those dichotomies within ourselves. I remember the first time because I'm from a small town and didn't have a lot of male role models, and there was this guy in my unit who was just came he came from a special forces unit, so he was well respected and super humble. And we were driving somewhere, and he had a Mariah Carey album in his car, and it actually had all of like she had like the collection. And I was like, Brian, that's a lot of Mariah Carey for, a 25-year-old dude. And he just is like, yeah, I really like anything with that anything sung over a piano really hits me.
That's it right there, man. Plus he's spec ops and none to prove shit. So that's why he's spec ops, probably. Yeah.
And it was just like it's like unassailable. There's no, and he even noticed I was like uncomfortable, and he was like, "Oh, does that bother you, Josh?"
He made you uncomfortable. Yeah, that's it. If
Yeah.
you own it, be like, yeah, I like whatever. I like Justin Bieber. What, and you don't care. Yeah, you be uncomfortable.
Yeah, the adjustments of perception that I was having to make in my own mind about
Yep.
that
Yep. That's
was
the move.
but it and this is the takeaway, and this is why we do the podcast. Because by doing that and not being defensive or even, strange about it, he expanded the conversation on what it is to be a man and
Yes.
in a way that was natural and easy and safe. And now I was like, okay, real men can listen to Mariah Carey and
Approved.
that's it. And because of that, when I got into my mid 20s and I didn't like sports, I would get online, I would check out football scores and NCAA or whatever, so I knew what teams had played, so I knew what people are talking about at work.
Right.
I just wanted to know what people are. I cared not,
Yeah.
and I stopped even pretending to people that I was into sports. But I had friends who were from Pittsburgh, so if I knew that the Steelers had won their game that weekend or on Thursday, then I could be in the conversation and it helped me, but I didn't care. And realizing that was okay. Like I don't need to be into sports to be a guy. And these things might seem small, but when you don't have a lot of exposure, I think that people will be surprised as to where the lines of masculinity are drawn and what is
Yep.
acceptable to show up as.
Yep. And it goes for women too, and their with their version of the good girl. And they have their own journeys. It's all codependency at the end of the day.
Yes, you mentioned I have some lay definitions and I want to run them by you because I want you to clarify because I want to talk about the difference between codependency, vulnerability, and having a borderline personality. And because you definitely have to be vulnerable if you want to be in a real relationship. And sometimes those vulnerabilities can flow into codependency accidentally, like hey, I need this from you. Hey, I'm not going to be okay if you can't give this to me.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's I'm gonna make you. Oh well, yeah. Well, I don't know. What's the so where do these lines are for these things?
Mhm.
I loosely understand that vulnerability is revealing that you have what your needs are and how
Mhm.
and how they can be met or how you're trying to meet them. And codependency is I'm not okay if you're not okay.
Pretty much, you're both getting something out of that dysfunctional relationship. And vulnerability, a lot of times, nice guys will, or good girls will overshare, lack of boundaries. Again, with these this dynamic, there's a boundary. Probably don't know what boundaries are. We let people use us as doormats or whatever. There's a lot of oversharing. So it doesn't mean just go be naked and vulnerable. I think a lot of guys struggle with that word vulnerable because it means like we're open to being manipulated and naked in the middle of a field while a war party is going to attack us. There's something in our evolution. I like the word openness because then you can decide who's coming in and out. And that's it. Like with vulnerability, people have to earn that right according to you. Do you get to know that much of me, or do you get to know a little bit of me? There's like that circle of trust thing, and you have to learn what that is for you. And openness is kind of the same thing. You could sort of have like instead of a wall, you've got a castle with windows and a drawbridge, and I can let people in, or I can close that off, or I can say hi from the window. Or it's like a shield wall in like the Roman times or the Greek times where you let people in and close it off. You still have a protective part, but you're not trying to just be the protective part 100% of the time because then you're self-imposed prison, and that's not a good move either. But people got to
Semi-permeable permeable membrane.
pretty much, yeah, exactly, exactly. With wisdom too, not just willy-nilly. It's like, no, I trust this person. You're in my inner world now. I trust you to come in and see my real vulnerabilities after I was open and let you in because I feel safe. You're not going to come in there and kick me in the nuts. You're like, I don't need to wear the jock strap, or it's all good. With that person over there, I'm definitely wearing the jock strap, whatever. With nice guys, it's like I just go around naked with everybody, and just here I am, and do whatever you want with me, like a puppeteer kind of a thing, a marionette. That's not what we're trying to do. So that vulnerability plays in that way. And codependency is like you both have some sort of dysfunctional thing with each other. So like back to the example with the person with the borderline personality disorder has a need to control a lot of outcomes with the other person, a fear of abandonment. So they'll cancer out all the other relationships in their partner. You can't see that person. Here's some weird reason why. And if you push back, I'll emotionally terrorize you by whatever means, gaslighting, icing you out, blah, blah, blah. And the nice guy is like, well, I don't want to be alone and I need someone in my life. I don't want to hurt their feelings because if I hurt their feelings, then I'm a bad boy. There's a whole like shame component to nice guyism and good girlism. There's like, I have to be dubbed that I'm a good person by your validation. And so they get into this weird ass relationship with someone with a personality disorder, and like they kind of will lose their sense of self because people with personality disorders are really good at gaslighting, and you start to believe, am I the crazy one in this relationship? They'll say something that's kind of true and blow it out of proportion. And if you have no sense of self, you're going to really believe it right away because you really don't know who you are. Like, I guess that must be me. Right. So they're really susceptible and very flammable to the gaslighting thing. So that's kind of a version of codependency. And getting to your borderline personality disorder question. That's only a topic too, personality disorders. That comes from immense trauma from childhood and attachment wounds gone wild, basically.
Yeah. The thing I think about with people who are in um, uh, codependent relationships and toxic relationships of all kinds. I had a lot of experience with this because my mom was only in these relationships because she was borderline personality, is a kind of borderline personality person.
Do you think
Mm,
confirmed, or is that your suspicion?
well, it's difficult to get somebody's medical records. Although I've been involved in some of her therapists over the years.
Mhm.
She has had a lot of diagnoses.
Yeah, but
So,
she
uh,
has borderline personality disorder.
borderline.
I like to make that distinction that you're not a borderline personality like as a human. That's no such thing. It's like you can heal from that. It's not like sociopathy or psychopathy where it's like you got some brain stuff going on or antisocial personality disorder. Like you can heal from that. And I like to take the stigma away because those people are super suffering. Like they might act really nasty, so it's really hard to like have forgiveness sometimes. And I've had personal experience, but they didn't get that way by no reason. They've got severe trauma, and they're just acting it out in the only way they know how. So, without years of therapy, it's they're just going to keep doing it. So, I try to have a little bit of compassion and not label them a diagnosis if I can. I know these words are thrown around a lot, like narcissism. Oh, he's a narcissist. She's a narcissist. No, they're just selfish. Like you're cheapening the word for them to have narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, that's a whole another freaking thing, and that's more rare. Where these disorders are more rare. It's kind of spectrumy, and people can have versions of them. So that's just a little bit of a caveat I put out there when we talk about personality disorders.
Yeah, and I think the the level of functioning, right, it can be wildly different in all of these disorders and presentations. But the having watched my mom go through these different toxic relationships, one of the things that is really clear is they only work if your world stays really small. Like
Yeah.
you have to be aware or think you're aware of everything in this other person's world and try to, manipulate or control it. And I found it very fascinating when, when people get stuck with a partner and it's because they don't know how to use like a boundary. Like they don't know how to set one boundary.
Mm.
And that one boundary would dissolve the entire, dynamic, and I don't want to out anybody, but I have a friend who was in a toxic relationship with her husband, the next husband, for years until she learned what boundaries are, and she literally said, like, I'm not going to pick up the phone anymore when you call if you don't call between the hours of this and that, and just like that. The toxic part of the relationship is over because she controlled her time and energy around their
Mm.
communication.
Mm.
And the the significance of that is that the more unstable you feel with your own personhood, the wider the gap of needs that you're trying to get from the people around you, right? So I think the smaller your world is, the more desperately manipulative you become. And I really appreciate you talking about the differences between all these things because someone who's selfish is if they're fragile, right, and they want to control the conversation, they can't handle feedback, and they're selfish because they have to get these needs met from you or from their environment, right? That person is a very small world and a very small, narrow, bandwidth of function that if you address that, this stuff would probably dissolve, or at least they could, like you said, they could shirk some of these tendencies. But all of the theme throughout all of this, right, is that if you go deep within yourself and love yourself first, then there's very little friction that you can get from other people because you talked about being if you're vulnerable with me, I won't kick you in the balls. I might kick you in the balls, but part of letting people inside your guard is knowing that if I give you some pressure or some feedback, it's probably because you've given me permission to, enter your circle. It's probably coming from some form of a real, compassionate
Yeah, you
uh,
care.
point of criticism, and that
Mm.
makes it hurt a little bit more, which people don't like, right? So that's why people don't like vulnerability.
Mhm.
And it's also it might hurt a little bit more, but it also might be a little bit more valuable in terms of
Mhm.
environmental feedback.
Yeah, you'll listen, and it'll be a compassionate ball kicking. It's not a malicious one.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and the I think the to come full circle on the toxic effect of a pleasing personality is if you don't know who you are, everybody's criticisms of you are valid.
Yeah, you'll just assume they're right.
Well, and they are, right? If you don't have a good brand has edges. A good brand, you can see where they begin and end and what they do and don't do. This is the way we do it here. We're not doing that. It's like uh my particular brand of fitness, I don't have a lot of supplements that I like or even talk about because I mostly think they're a waste of money. There's like three. Sure we can talk about them sometime, but they're not nothing revolutionary because the only things that have extensive safety and literature behind them, there's very few things that meet the that criteria. Um,
So you're on steroids, basically.
my brand, hey, they work. They work. Um,
They
But
do.
my brand is I don't do supplements. I don't sell supplements. I don't have a personal problem with them, but there's no supplements in my ecosystem of my the programs that I advocate and the teachings I give. I don't talk a lot about supplements. This is not part of the thing. I happen to have that position, but if you as a person can't find your own edges, then you need a lot of reassurance and validation from everyone around you, and that is
Yeah.
exhausting to be around.
Yes. You're trying to tell them to give you your edges. That's not fair. That's simply not fair. Tell me who I am. I, one, fuck you. Two, I can't. Cannot do that. You have to do that.
Yeah, and so knowing your boundaries is really important, and it doesn't mean you have to have. And by the way, the opposite of that is having strong opinions about everything. I don't have an opinion on most things. I don't watch the news. I gotta text my buddy. I just realized that there was a huge hurricane and it hit his hometown. So
Yeah, sure.
I gotta text him. But I don't know what's going on. I don't have a lot of opinions on anything. If it's health and fitness and it's preventative medicine, health and fitness and sustainable, holistic, there's a certain bandwidth of things that I have, very strong opinions on. But outside of that, I don't really have a lot of,
Mhm.
and coffee. I don't have a lot of strong opinions. And that's
Mhm.
okay. I don't need
No.
to show up everywhere, but I know what I'm about.
Yeah, I think people have strong opinions don't really know what they're about. They're trying to make that their identity and what they're about, and that's why they have to be right. Because if they're wrong, then who am I? That's why you don't want to identify with your beliefs or politics, because then you're screwed if they go away. Then it's a vacuum. Who am I? I am scared, and that's kind of back to the nice guy. That's I don't know who I am. I'm scared. I need you to tell me who I am. It's not a good psychological space to be in.
Yeah. Well, yes, it
It's
is.
painful.
It's painful and it's it's um it's humbling work to figure out who you are. And maybe that's a part two of this will be on. Anything else you would add to the people who are trying to the pain of being a pleasing person means that you have fewer authentic relationships, you exhaust everyone around you, and you are ultimately unsatisfied and alone. I can't think of any more reasons to change than that, but what would you add to that, Miles?
Go get Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Glover, and then your buddy Dr. Aziz has a book called Not Nice. Pick up that one. We got to get him on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
And then there's another guy, I can't remember the name, but the book is called The Courage to Be Disliked. I don't know if you're reading that one. Have not read it yet, but that author's got a bunch, but I've heard that one speaks to this subject as well. But do some recon about it, like read and listen to podcasts. Connor Beaton's podcast, Man Talks, has a bunch. Trevor Bohm's podcast has a bunch on a lot on the nice guy. In fact, he has a nice guy course you can take. You could try that out. And then therapy, man, psychotherapy or coaching around this will help lead you out of it. And for men, one of the things that Dr. Glover really recommends is like, if you don't know what being a man is, you need to get initiated. Go do stereotypically manly things and hang out with a lot of men and see what that's like. Doesn't mean go join the Hells Angels, although maybe that could be good for you. Go join a jujitsu gym, go join the soccer league, something, like hang out with dudes. Because a lot of nice guys have way too many girl relationships, feminine relationships. That's one, which is weird. But two, it's safer, right? A lot of guys, nice guys, have a fear of masculine relationships because they had an abusive father or no father, and they just don't like that masculine. And so they find themselves in this weird feminine relationship realm, and it gets to be too much. And it's fine to have a feminine relationship, but when that's all you got, it's kind of off. It's out of balance. It's like, and same with the good girls. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I hate girls. They're catty. I can never be around them," and they have a lot of dude relationships. And there's some good things about that, but like, what about, are you crushing your femininity to avoid that? Or same with men, are you crushing your masculinity to avoid it? Like that's problematic. We don't want to do that. It's self-aggressive. You're hurting yourself. Like go be uh go have both sides. Go have an experience of your masculine and feminine for wholeness, as Jung would say, we're seeking wholeness here. So that's one of his tips, and I think that's a really good one. Join a men's group, join a women's group, whatever it is. Um, and I think women can have, stereotypically speaking, relationships with guys better than guys can have relationships with women. Because I think a lot of guys in the back of their mind are like, could we have sex? Even though a nice guy might not ask it, they might be thinking it. Like, and I don't, and that the reverse is probably not happening for the women. They're probably like, oh, this guy's really nice. Yeah, so I think that there's something, there's a layer there, and each nice guy will have to ask himself that question: what are we doing here? Is there a secondary gain you're hoping to maybe have happen? Are you thinking about that? Or are you trying to use that woman female friendship as a form of validation to tell you you're a good man, a good boy, that you're, in the eyes of the feminine, you're not a shameable human, a shameable man? So definitely ask these questions. But yeah, if you feel like you're under indexed in the masculine realm, go do male oriented things, whatever that seems to you, what calls to you. And you can ease in low hanging fruit, you can microdose it. You don't have to go hunting right away or whatever the stereotypical thing is and get a motorcycle. But if it calls to you, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. I yeah, okay. Well, we'll end on that. I think that's good advice from the doc. Um, we'll post those books in the show notes, and uh maybe we'll do a part two with some additional next steps and lessons learned.
Yeah, and I hope to have Dr. Glover on the podcast sometime soon too, because he's the man when it comes to this. It's really, really great. All
Awesome.
right. So when I see you all next, I'll be hobbled even more.
Hobbled and on drugs, so maybe
And
you'll have
drugs
some more
and
exciting things to say.
oh yeah, I'm trying to be too high for the next podcast or wincing in pain. We'll see. Supposed to travel to Colorado to do one of Traver Boehm's programs. We'll see if that happens next week. So lots of fun, lots of uncertainty in my life, but I'm learning to be comfortable being uncertain, which is hard as fuck.
Hey man, well, it sounds like you're learning to live. Appreciate you, Miles.
Yeah, likewise. All right. See y'all next time. Share this with anybody if you think it was helpful, and we'll see you next week.